Welcome to Integrated Insights with ICCG. For more than 30 years, our team has partnered with small business owners to prepare for and navigate the business transaction process. Pull up a chair as we share stories and insights from our experience on all sides of the M&A table.
Well, we're back. Second one starting now. We didn't scare you guys off, so excited to have you guys back on the podcast. And my name is Andrew. I'll be your host today. Michael, you're with me on hosting this, and we're excited today. We're going to talk about some deals and our experience with some deals. And so we've got Dave and Grant, the principals of ICCG. And so we are excited to talk about our experience. I know I'll chime in. I've got 7 years of experience doing some deals. Michael, you jumped on this summer, so excited to hear your take on some of these. But I know I'm very excited, Dave, Grant, to hear your take on some of these deals that I know we'll talk about. And so and this will include deals that you've been a part of, you've bought, you've sold, whatever that looks like, but really just deals in general. And so we're excited. Y'all ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Oh, let's jump.
All right. Well, perfect. Well, let's go ahead and do the first one. And we're going to say, what was the longest deal that you guys were a part of?
Emotionally or in time?
I'll let you take it however you want.
I have one, so it depends. We had a deal that finally sold last year we worked on that off and on because it really sold like 3 times, but then it didn't sell. But then it finally sold. So how many years was that over?
Every deal doesn't close.
I mean, if we had to say how long, what was the longest touch on one deal of the same company, it would have been that one. And I'm not sure, Grant, would that have been 8 years?
Yeah. Well, no, not quite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just felt like 20.
There are deals where preparing the company for sale takes a lot longer than others. But once you start engaging sellers and you then obviously work towards a close, then that would be one that took the longest. There's no question. Yeah. There's actually one that, and this will get into the whole question of timing. Years ago, we did a roll up in a towing industry, and we eventually sold. And we tried to get a transaction done because of some accidents we had. We tried to get a transaction done with the same seller that the same buyer that we ended up selling to 3 or 4 times. And the timing just didn't fit. The timing, we wanted to do it. But ultimately the actual deal points didn't line up, and it wasn't necessarily because of a negotiation. It had to do with litigation that was ongoing. It had to do with the capital structure of the buyer. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen over time, and we can get into a whole different podcast about how to script timing and those kinds of things. A lot of times, we have great plans, but they don't necessarily pan out the way we script. It doesn't mean that we don't try to make things happen, but sometimes you have to bob and weave is the analogy we typically use through the process to make sure that it's a win-win for both the buyer and the seller. And so when we sold that company, it actually didn't happen on our timing. And we are, hindsight, incredibly grateful that it didn't happen on our timing. It actually happened, miraculously the day before one of the largest crashes in the market. And had it happened 6 months before that, when Dave and I were trying to make it happen, we would have had our money in the market and lost 50% of our capital. And so timing is not necessarily what you script, but ultimately you work towards it and you make sure that it's a win-win for everybody. And then at the right time, it seems to close.
Yeah, I think that may be one of the most. I think one of the things we talked about was one of the more rewarding deals, and I think that might have been it on several levels. And it wasn't just the financial piece at the end of the day, but it was more than that. We felt like it landed in a good place. Our people landed in a good place. It felt like it was a win-win, and we felt like we had no control over that. And I think one thing important to point out that Grant said is, if you're listening today and you're a buyer, you're a seller, you're a business owner, and you're planning on selling, remember there's a lot of things that are out of control of both buyer and seller. And I think we try to educate a seller going into that, going, look, there's going to be some things that we're going to set this time frame, but there are going to be some things, and it could be on your end. We could uncover something that you didn't even know about that's going to stop the process for a little bit till we get it figured out, till the buyer is comfortable with it. Same on the buyer's side. They may have a problem with financing at the last minute. We're just going to have to discern whether that's legit or not. That's what we're here for, to help you with that. But really helping people understand that, because a lot of people want to keep driving. We've recently closed a deal and they're just driving, and post close everything is just like this threat on of getting things done on certain deadlines, and the real world just doesn't operate like that. When you're dealing with compliance issues with governments and everything else, it just doesn't work that way. So we try to set people up with that. There was a small company, and sometimes the smaller deals take the longest, which we try to talk about with our team a lot. But it was one that I'd taken on. I just became great friends with these people. It was in the gourmet food industry, and it was dried mushrooms is what it was. Like legit mushrooms, the ones you eat, that kind of thing. It just took forever. We had to kind of educate ourselves in this, and it just took a long time. I felt like I think it spanned like over 3 years, and I thought, wow, this is a beating. But to see these people happy to this day, when they give us updates on how the earn out and how all that went, we would get this a little check in every once in a while, because they'd been paid an earn out, and they sent us our commission on that. And it was, they're just happy as they could be, and they still are. And great people deserve great deals, and that's what we try to give people.
I think it's hard to answer the longest deal, because I feel like, especially with us, it's a little probably easier with most brokers, investment bankers, other intermediaries. I think that the deal is from the time of engagement until it closes, and the reality is that we spend a lot of time with clients before we officially engage for the purpose of a transaction. And so I remember. I know the company that you mentioned that closed last year, we did. I remember you guys had tried to sell them before I jumped on, and I think it was twice that you tried. And so they were with us for a long time, and that's happened before. That's happened before with a couple others. I know that we did one in the machining company where you had been really advising them through, hey, we're restructure your company this way, that way, and it was what, couple years? How long did you kind of stay with him before we officially engaged to put on the market and sell?
Yeah, we actually had him on the market, and his clients tanked. He was in an industry that went through a down cycle. So we walked him through that. We actually took it off the market at that point. And then eventually he got involved with a much more diverse customer base, and ended up being an incredible win for him at the end of the day. But, that's something that, when you have advisors that are trying to force their agenda, we don't get paid until the deal is done. And so when your advisor is trying to make it happen just to earn a commission, then you're not
You're
on
with
the
the wrong
same side of
advisor.
the table, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
and so we're in it for the long haul to make sure that it's the right deal at the right time.
Mm.
And sometimes you have to withdraw, or you have to
Mhm.
say, no, this is not the right deal. We're going to find another buyer. And again, I mean, I'll go back to what I said in the previous episode. You know, our clients have this non-financial regret if they find out after the fact that the people, the customers, and their reputation are not taken care of. And we just like to guard against that. Make sure they understand the buyer, and look, buyer's not going to do what they do and treat people exactly the same as what they do, and they have to let go. But we try to make sure that we're looking ahead and making sure that those three things are not up for grabs.
Yeah, I remember timing is such a key thing. I remember this is before I jumped on, and I remember you guys had this is after you guys had sold the towing roll up and that whole ordeal, and I remember you were telling me that you were kind of talking to me about that story a little bit about that time, and you said, yeah, we kind of thought, okay, we're going to sell it for $1, and then we decided to wait, and then at one point, well, but then we could sell it for more than $1. And then another opportunity came, and you kind of said, okay, well, we can sell it for a lot more than $1. And I think there was another time, and then we finally did it. And it really was the timing that was key. And I know even the deal that Dave we just talked about last year that closed, that we've been there for a long time, and every time that we have done it with them, they've grown significantly. And so
it was a
being
win-win for
large
them. They
deal.
did a great job growing the company. They did a
Yeah.
great job growing the company. They took advantage of those breaks in between the deals, and and made it happen. Both in that deal and the machining deal we talked about a minute ago, Andrew, that we had to pull off the market. That was where it was really advantageous to have someone like Grant on the team, because he was able to then work with them, getting some bookkeeping and stuff in order, and kind of planning from a tax perspective. So when it came back on the market, we knew exactly what we were going to do, and he knew exactly, and he'd already gotten their house in order, so to speak, from a deal standpoint, and so it was much easier to execute at that point.
Yeah, I'd even go harder to the whole, Dave. I think you would agree with me on this. And just personally, as we've gone in and bought businesses and started businesses, a lot of times when we force the timing, we're overlooking key things that that affected the business, and it's really caused challenges after the fact. We're very intentional on trying to make sure that we don't get deal fatigue, that we push deals along, that our clients don't get agitated with us for dragging our feet. But we're also very intentional on making sure that we don't overlook things, that we consider everything, and that takes time.
So what about the deal that comes up the most in conversation? Post deal, what deal do you bring up the most and talk to other people about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start, because I will say the one that I think, and this may be something that you guys won't say, but I think the one that comes up in conversation the most is the pest control deals that
No
that
question.
you guys have done, because there's the lesson of the revenue model that people don't understand. And when buyers are looking for a business, it's more advantageous to go the recurring route than the projects that will give you higher margin, right? And every business owner is thinking, well, higher margin is better. But in pest control, it's always the lesson with everybody that we talk to. It's one guy had termite business, and the buyer doesn't want termites, and so he grew the recurring side, the maintenance side, that doesn't really give you more margin in the moment, right? But it builds the most value over time, and the buyer will pay a certain level for that, rather than they don't care about the termite because they'll never see it again. And so we kind of talk about that. I would say that one is the one that we most talk about, even though we probably talk about other deals a lot too.
Yeah. But I think the one that keeps coming up, because that deal was done a long time ago, and I think that what's important is realize that we learned the value of tucking in or adding in companies. So it was more like he had his own little platform company that we were helping him purchase other companies to tuck in with it, so that it was ready when we took it. It was easy. It wasn't easy, but we knew who the buyer was going to be. We knew it was going to be one of 2 or 3 national consolidators, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I think the reason why it comes up all the time is because of the emphasis on the revenue model, and really that's one reason why that revenue model is so important. But people who, especially business owners who have built a business over 30 years, they're thinking the business instead of thinking just the basic blocks of the revenue model, because that's what a potential buyer, particularly a larger potential buyer, either a P group or a large consolidator or competitor in the market, is really after that revenue model. And so we focus on the revenue model all the time. And so just, you talked a minute ago about the machining company that we did. We changed their revenue model. It's not we advised our client to change from a job shop to a production shop for the same reason as that quarterly pest control has more value to a buyer than the one-off pre-treats.
Michael, let me ask you, what you've been on with us for a few months now. What's the deal that you would say that we've probably talked about the most?
I think it's the same answer to the longest deal. I think when you're working on a deal for that long and you go through the entire process that many times, and it's a more recent deal, it tends to come up in conversation a lot. So
it gives us the most lessons.
Yeah. I will say this. That made me think about this. We do mainly sell side, but we do a lot of buy side too. We're starting to do more and more buy side. And I would say the deal over the last year we've talked about is not a single deal, but a series of deals. We've been helping a client, with a lot of buy side in the medical industry. And that's just, that's constant, right? That's constant conversation amongst us and everything. And we're now looking forward to what's next in that. So that's been something we've been dabbling in this particular part of the industry since 2017. I think you'll find it's situations like that where it's not just a single deal, but a series of deals within the same industry. And we've covered so many different industries in our careers that it's crazy. It's hard to say, what do you specialize in? I have no idea. But we do have quite a history in these particular industries.
Yep, that's true. All right. Well, what about the most rewarding deal? Money aside, right? Our fee aside, what was the most rewarding deal?
I think it's probably one of our portfolio companies that we sold. I mean, that's what I would just say. And here's why. We owned it for 13 years. We weren't really looking to sell it. It was one of those that was really helping us, financially, just kind of, which is good for us. But when the right opportunity came along, and it was during a tough time of the world's, it was all during COVID and, all this, and we were able to pull this off. But, what the good thing about that is I think we made sure everyone landed well on that deal, from the partners to the people that we had some minor shareholders in the company. I think everyone's still there today. Almost all of them are still there today. It's several years down the road. I don't know, something about that was like that. We kind of saw it full circle. We went through the process of buying this distressed company, kind of turning it around, and then selling it, which was what we learned. I think Grant and I learned more about deal structure and stuff because we had really a blessing. The buyer, one of the guys that was helping the buyers, it was part of the buyer group, just had years and years of really, really large PE group experience, and he just became a really great friend. And we learned a lot from him. Just doing that deal. So I've seen like it was just like this big rewarding thing all the way around. I don't know. That's what I've thought of, Grant. What about you?
Well, I can tell you why that was that particular company. If you remember, Dave, we actually started a division and then sold the division several years before we actually sold the actual company. And both times, Dave and I got to hand out some pretty sizable checks to employee owners that that has always been super fulfilling to do. When talk about structure, Dave and I I would probably say the two of you would agree that we're not the most tech savvy people in the world, but we found ourselves owning. We found
You do
ourselves.
your best. I don't know. Yeah. What are you
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah.
I
Shut
mean,
up.
no one had to come over to my
I've seen
house and set up
worse.
my microphone for me.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
oh wait, maybe someone did.
So, we found ourselves, with a great opportunity to own a technology company with zero sort of background in that world, other than the applications that we were used to using. And so we walked in day one and gave a percentage of the company to in different percentages to every single employee in the house on that day. And they weren't voting shares, but they were a share of the proceeds if we ever sold it. And they certainly received dividends over the years and those kinds of things. But it was just incredibly, I guess, fulfilling, because at the end of the day, we got to sell the company, and all of those employees who were with us from the beginning got to benefit. And Dave and I love that. I think, just because of the role I play sometimes, sitting across or getting a phone call. We sold this environmental lab one year, and the owner calls me up. This is obviously several $1 million of proceeds, and he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, you were wrong." And I said, "Oh." And he goes, "Yeah, you missed the net calculation by $80." And
Idiot.
one of the things that we
Net of taxes, net of debt, net of
net of
everything.
taxes,
Oh
net
yeah.
of debt,
Mm-hmm.
net of
Mm-hmm.
bonuses, net of everything, right? And so he'd had his tax return done, and I missed it by $80. And he was an engineer, and that kind of person. And so $80, he literally had the calculation, and he was anticipating a little bit more of a difference. And so that to me, when we're able to help people script results that way, particularly what they're going to end up net, is super helpful. If I would defend myself, it really is something that business owners are really worried about. And that is, okay, what am I going to end up with? Because you can sell your business for a ton of money, but not end up with the net that you really want or need, or the reason that a lot of people sell their business is to retire. And so it's important to know that. And we have a little bit of expertise in that area that helps their advisors, because we structure it in purposefully to accomplish that net. I remember sitting opposite. I found a guy at a local brewery sitting down, having a beer, and I walked in, and we had sold his business probably a year before that. And he calls me over, and he was there with his wife, and he goes, "Grant, I'm the happiest guy, because you were right. You got us exactly what we wanted. We paid all our taxes. I looked at my brokerage account. It's right where you said it would be. And not only on the financial piece, but we talked him off of not making a long-term commitment to be an employee of the organization. He looked at me, he goes, "Man, you guys were right." And I think, I don't know that it's just because I like to be right. It's really because we care about our clients and we want to perform the way, according to the promises that we make. And so when we do that and it's acknowledged, those are very rewarding.
Well, and I would say this kind of, I know we're getting close to the end of this particular session, but I do want to say this, and I think this kind of helps put a bow on some of this we're talking about. It just dawned on me, we listen to other people, we hear their stories, we hear people, successful, I would say financially successful people talk about their story. And I think since we talk with a lot of small business owners, and some buyers, I think it's really important to keep perspective on what is rewarding to you. And I think sometimes when you sit in conferences and stuff and you hear the stories and it's all about, well, then I went and made this many millions, and then I made this many. By the time I was 30, I had this many millions, and da-da-da. And those millions can kind of add up and kind of get good. But I would say be careful who you're listening to if you never hear them talk about the people around them and how they benefited from that. Or, if we talk to a business owner and he's like, "No, it's all mine. I'm not going to reward. I'm not rewarding anybody." I mean, I kind of like, okay, hope these people stick around. Not that you have to reward everybody, but just make sure that that rewarding has perspective to it. Because the reason that we're here, wherever we are in our business, the reason that we're here is not just because of what we've done. It's because the people that have gathered around us to get us there. And I think sometimes we have to kind of temper ourselves and make sure that what we're pursuing is not just financial gain, but also the gain. And what's interesting about some of the stories we've heard in the past is when sometimes they pursue that, they wake up one day and they go, "Wow, my identity was in that, and rather than in some other really important things in life. Now I'm here, and the money thing's just kind of over here. It's good. It can be security, but that's not really where I'm finding my value anymore." So I just think that's really important for business owners to hear. And talk to those who've gone before you, see how they were really rewarded at the end of the day. Because sometimes business owners sell their business and they look at these and they're not sure what to do now. And I think there's a whole other story there we can get into sometime. But
yeah. Closing day plus one, right? What does that next day look like? You got the money in your bank account. What now?
Yeah.
So.
We try to warm people up with that. What's that going to look like?
Hey, podcast episode number 2 in the books. And so, hey, we didn't scare you off yet. I hope you guys will come back. And
you're making assumptions that people are listening.
This is true.
Nobody's listening yet.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
And that wraps up another episode of Integrated Insights with ICCG. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more stories from our team. We love hearing from our listeners. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, please send us an email in the show notes. For more information about ICCG, please check us out on our website or follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Until next time, there's always a seat at our table.